This
Right.
conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. Notice is hereby given that the Lago Vista City Council is holding a special called meeting on Wednesday, August 4th, 2021 at 5:32 p.m. as prescribed by the VTCA Government Code Section 551.041 to consider the following agenda items. Sandra, please note we have all of our council members in attendance. And we will start with our Pledge of Allegiance to the U.S. and the Texas flag. U.S. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, now the Texas flag. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, one state, under God,
one
and indivisible. Thank you. All right. Dun, dun, dun. Okay. Dun, dun, dun. Citizen comments. Before we actually get into the language, is there anybody that has anything, any audience members that has anything that doesn't pertain to this CRC language they would like to? All right, seeing nothing, we will go to number 1, action item, discussion, consideration, possible action regarding charter review committee recommendations. So, Aaron?
Yes, sir.
Turn it over to you to take the lead. Let me see, summary, I'll read the summary. At the July 29th City Council meeting, Council voted to move forward with a total of 21 proposed changes to the city charter. 8 of the proposed changes are non-substantive corrections to spelling, punctuation, or Scrivener's error identified by the Charter Review Committee. These 8 will be bundled into one ballot measure. Of the remaining 13 changes, 5 are proposed to make charter language consistent with state law. The other 8 consist primarily of language proposed by the Charter Review Committee for clarification or to reflect a change in policy or practice by the city. So Aaron, now I'll turn it over to you and you let us know how we want to proceed through these.
Sure. I guess one point of clarification, I think Council Prince pointed out that there might be a couple more items that were really being changed as in an effort to be consistent with state law. So my count was a little off. But my proposal or my recommendation to you tonight is to take them measure by measure. One, making sure that the actual charter language that you, as you want it reflected in the charter, should it be approved by the voters, is accurate. And then more importantly, to look at the language for the measure to make sure it accurately reflects the reason for the change and the effect of the change. So if there is massaging, tweaking, adjusting, changing of any of the language in either part of the proposed ballot language, I highly recommend that let's iron that out tonight because we have some deadlines coming up for adoption of the ordinance that would put this on the ballot for the election. And we want to make sure we've ironed out all those details. So with that, you know, we can proceed one by one if you want me to lead that discussion or if you want to do that. Yep. We just need to make sure we have accurate descriptions of what's actually changing and more importantly, so that the voters understand, you know, whether it's something that's necessary to be consistent with state law or what the effect would be.
Got it. I will take it. And I think we know what we're going to do. So we'll start with A. Shall section 1.04 entitled Annexation and Disannexation be amended to provide for the city's annexation authority in accordance with current Texas law. If approved, section 1.04 alpha would read as follows. Section .104, annexation and disannexation. A, annexation by city council. The council shall have the power by ordinance to annex property, to fix the boundaries of the city, and to provide for the alteration or extension of said boundaries pursuant to the laws of the state of Texas, now or as may be amended. So any thoughts from council on the actual language, 104 alpha?
Do you think it's important to point out for the voters, one of the things that, interestingly enough, I'm at a conference for city attorneys. The last presentation of the day, which I just walked away from, was about amending your charter. And one of the recommendations is to have a red line copy of the language, not necessarily on the ballot, but available for the voters to see. The change that's occurring in this particular section is the removal of the word adjacent, so that we would not be limited to annexing property, only property that is adjacent. And the reason for that, as y'all discussed, is that we are allowed to annex property that the city owns or is contiguous to the city boundaries. So do you find it important that we point out that we are removing that word as an explanatory part of the ballot proposition?
So my question earlier, I think you were in the office when we were discussing this, I'm pretty sure. I asked, when we post this, are we posting an FAQ portion on our website? Because I know the citizens are going to have, they're going to want to know more specifics than what it just says. And I would say that this red line version should be part of those FAQs. That's my thoughts.
Yeah, definitely want to post an FAQ document that includes the red line. We have to be very careful because there are certain limitations with regard to how we post it. It has to be a very neutral document. It cannot advocate for or against any particular measure. So as long as we are factually describing what the change is and what the effect is, in addition to what you would see on the ballot, that would be an appropriate document to prepare and have available for the citizens.
All right. So again, council's language, is it written 104A as you would expect it to be written in the actual charter? Yes, Council Prince.
I would suggest, as Ms. Silvera was, I think, hinting at, that in the description, it might be good to point out that this is allowing for annexation of non-adjacent properties. I mean, that's really the point of the change, and it doesn't come out in the description at all. And without a red line copy, there's no way to know it from this. So I would suggest that we capture that. I do have a question. I've heard just now from Ms. Silvera, and I think the other night as well, that this is, the purpose of this is to allow for annexation of non-adjacent city-owned properties. But I believe it would also allow for annexation of non-adjacent properties that are not city-owned, as long as it meets the criteria of the people being annexed have to want it to happen, you know, whatever the specifics of that are. Is that true?
No, sir. The requirement in state law is that the property be contiguous and adjacent to the city. The exception is that we can annex property that we own. So
Okay.
it would not allow us to annex something that is not contiguous unless we owned it. The other changes to the annexation laws that essentially put us in a position where we're only going to realistically annex something that is by with the approval or authority, authorization or request of the property owner. There are ways to do it, to annex property, but you have to go, there's a vote, you have to go to the voters. So it's unlikely that the city would do that. It is an option, but that's not really what's being addressed here. So the contiguity piece still applies with the exception of property that the city owns.
So along that note, I'm just going to throw this out there. It happened before my time. I don't know what the process was used or whether it went to voters or not, but if you look at our annexation map, the Winds had requested their third 500-acre ranch get annexed into the city. And so the city, of course, we could do it involuntarily back then, but maybe that's how we did it. Under the lake, we went under the lake or through the lake and then up the side of the cliff and across some property and across Loman Ford Road to get to their property. So I don't know the actual process, but you can reach other properties if you need to, or you
Yeah,
could in the past.
through the lake was our means of documenting contiguity. It's in my mind, it's legal. It was a stretch, but it's legal. And especially because that property owner wanted to be annexed in. So yeah, you still have to have the contiguity, and that's how they got it. That's why you see that little line through the lake to connect to the rest of the city.
Sorry, got us off topic. Okay, so I'm talking about the actual language. Paul made a recommendation to the description. I'm still talking about the language, 104A. Does the language, Councilor Sullivan?
I like that addition by Councilor Prince. I think that's a good one. And one technical point, in A, you can see it says shall section 104, blah, blah, and it's got a question mark at the end. If you go through this document, not all of them have a question mark at the end of that shall, and I would just suggest we should be consistent about that throughout the document.
It has it. It says in accordance with Texas law, question mark. If approved, section.
I'm saying, yes, A has it. There are several of the other ones that do not. And I'm just suggesting when we get to those that do not, we just be do it the same.
Good catch.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Yes, Councilor Marion.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm just wondering, and I'm sorry, I might be taking us a step back, but I'm wondering, do you think it might be possible to include perhaps a chart similar to the one that Judge Durbin provided, that color-coded one? Do you think it would be helpful to maybe provide that in addition to the red line version for voters to have or to refer to when trying to figure out what all this means?
So if I could make a suggestion, some of the stuff that we want the citizens to see that will go on our website in our FAQ section, like the red line, possibly this chart. Can we let's hold off on those until the end so that we can go through the actual items, that's going to be, on the ballot. Let's get through that first, and then we can decide how else we want to inform the citizens. But yes, I don't see why we cannot. I mean, it's our FAQ. I think we can, as long as we're not biased and pushing and promoting and advocating, I don't see why we can't put whatever information we want to. So, all right. So 104A, I still haven't heard any comments on the actual language, but I think we've got two suggestions. Well, one suggestion for the description, and Prince, Kevin gave us a description that applied to others as well, but anybody else with the language or in the description? No?
The language is exactly what we asked for. I mean, it's to get some response. Since there's been no response, the language, I believe, is perfect as written.
All right. Well, if we're happy with it, then I'll entertain a motion. Just make sure if we're going to make any changes to the description, that we include that.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we move forward with the language for item A on the ballot, with the exception that we want to make the adjustment to the descriptive section to describe what it is that's being done or what's being dropped, as Councilor Prince enumerated earlier.
Yeah. May I suggest amending that to be maybe a little more specific, to say that add to the descriptive language that we are amending to provide for the city's annexation authority to include, and here's where I'm adding, to include non-contiguous city-owned property in accordance with, and then it goes on from there.
That's fine with me.
That's good. That's what I need.
All right, so the amendment has been okayed by the motion. I have not even got the second yet, so I don't need that agreement. So do I have a second?
Second.
All right, I have the motion and the second from Councilor Marion. All those in favor? Oh, any further discussion?
Oh,
Sorry, jumped ahead. Any further discussion? Right, all those in
Oh,
favor
we
say
already-
aye. Aye.
aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none. A promotes, unanimous. A passes. A is accepted, whatever language, whatever word I'm trying to say. Y'all know what I'm saying.
Yep.
All right, so we'll go to B. Shall section 3.03 be amended to make the city secretary the judge of the qualifications of all candidates for elected officers? Question mark. If approved, section 3.03 would read as follows. Section 3.03, judge of election qualifications. The city secretary shall be the judge of the qualifications of all candidates for elected officers. Thoughts? Council Prince?
Two things. I think grammatically, and this I think I saw in a note from Ms. Silvera, grammatically, I think instead of officers, both in the description and the text, it should say office. I think that's the correct grammar for the sentence. And then secondly, in the description, I think it would be helpful to say that this is being done to be consistent with state law. And my point, it is one of the ones that I believe was on Ms. Silvera's list of to be state law. So let's call that out in the description.
All right.
Councilor Mary.
Did you have a thought, Aaron? You look
Councilor Mary had her hand up.
okay. Council Marion?
No, I was just going to say that I would agree with that. And I think it might make sense in every case where it is an edit or suggested change to be in alignment with state law, that we call that out.
All right. So I have a question on this one. Not that I'm saying I'm against that. I'm just trying to, were we not in accordance, or because we, or just that state law allows it for the city secretary? We weren't in
state law-
violation. We weren't in conflict, were we?
So the state law, okay, so the previous language for 3.03,
Had the council.
3. It said the council shall be the judge of the election. State law actually calls out the city secretary as that person. So, and we're, the Texas Election Law Manual points out that they have the specific duties. And Election Code Section 143.006. The general rule is the candidate applications are filed with the city secretary unless your city charter calls out someone else. So you can have other people, like all of the documents go to someone else, but I don't think that it's ever anticipated that it would go to the council themselves. Usually it'd be a designee. some other city employee that
Okay,
handle that. So
okay. Yeah, it just baffles me sometimes how we just had a charter review 3 years ago. How come nobody picked that up 3 years ago? Anyway, okay, I'm good.
So the language, if we revise it, the suggested language consistent with Councilor Prince's suggestion would read, shall section 3.03 be amended to be consistent with state law by making the city secretary the judge of the qualifications of all candidates for elected office, question mark. If approved, 3.03 would read, so we would make the changes to add that phrase and then change officers to office in both places.
That's the way I understood it. Anybody
Got
else?
I'm good with it.
All right, if that's it, I'll entertain a motion for B.
Mr. Mayor, I want to suggest that before you take a motion, that you ask for if citizens have comment on each of these items.
I gotta do it one by one.
Well, I guess you could have taken all the comments on everything up front. I just don't want there to be a claim or accusation that we didn't allow for public.
Yeah, I guess that's best. I was thinking I was just gonna let the citizens all come in at the end, but I guess if we already vote on them,
You have to do it before a vote.
it would be futile. All right. So, well, we missed A, sorry. B, anybody from the audience have any comments on B? All right. Oh, wait, saw a hand. Mr. Durbin.
Since there's no packet, nobody other than you guys knows what A and B state or what's in it. So I'm not sure. All we could comment on is what we hear rather than what can be seen, because there's nothing to look at. So you might want to skip this part. I don't know. I'm trying to save you some time.
Well, let me check. I was thinking we were going to get that added out
We did,
today.
Mr. Mayor. It wasn't posted on there. I'm not aware that the city secretary posted the document.
No, I think we were just in the office today talking about that, and maybe I misunderstood. I thought we were going to get it added because we knew it wasn't there.
So the one thing that I could do, if you are interested, Mr. Mayor, is I can pull up my screen with the Word document language so you can see the language and y'all can talk about it in real time. Would that be helpful?
Yes, it's better than nothing.
Gotcha. Give me 2 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Durbin.
That's not our document. Okay. Let me know if you need me to zoom in. I want to make it, I know that on your end, each person can zoom in more, but let me know if this is helpful. Because I can't see y'all now because I'm on my surface.
Aaron, you might want to zoom in a little bit. You can?
Okay.
Oh, looks like you did.
Well, I've zoomed my screen into just at 67%, and I can see it huge.
Okay.
So,
Very helpful. Thank you.
Certainly. Okay, so we're talking about, Mr. Mayor, you're on B.
B.
So I'm gonna do it this way. I'm gonna do track changes. Sorry, I'm talking out loud. Amended.
Council Marion?
I wonder, Aaron, would it be the same to say 3.03 be amended in accordance with state law to make the city secretary the judge of?
That's an appropriate way to say it. It's however you guys want to do it, you guys decide, but that is another valid approach. So you guys, I'll do the typing, but you guys direct me how you want it to read.
It
Marion,
just seems a little bit more succinct.
Okay.
Marion, can you say again what you just said?
Yes, shall section 3.03 be amended in accordance with state law to make the city secretary the judge of?
I like that.
And
Like that?
Aaron,
Yes, sir.
this is one of those ones that doesn't have a question mark at the end of the shall.
Yes. Thank you.
No problem.
She said that when she read it.
No,
Yeah, that looks good.
Yes.
somehow I think it disappeared. Gremlins, you know.
Because I wrote it on my paper. It's not on here. Okay. So is this the way you'd like to see it?
Looks good to me. And then maybe we could just repeat the same language for the other ones when they're state law.
Okay. Well, A, we've got, just to make sure, up in A, it says in accordance with current Texas law. This one says in accordance with state law. Should the top one say state law, or should the B say with current Texas law? If we want to be consistent.
I mean, it seems to me that they mean the same thing. Maybe just pick the way that you like it phrased better, because in accordance with current Texas law implies the same thing as in accordance with state law. But I don't know, Aaron, if you have a recommendation as to which way you think is more correct.
So for A, well, for both of them, the law has not changed. We have had the city's had the authority in theory to annex property that we own. So maybe it is more proper to say in accordance with state law. And if that's because if the one caveat I would say is if has been a recent change to state law, maybe there's a reason to point that out. Otherwise, in accordance with state law is probably the best way to do it.
Okay.
So you already voted on that one, but do you want to finish this one and then go back, or?
Yeah, we'll do that. Yeah. All right. Is there anything else for B? Any citizens now that you can see it? All right. I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we accept item B as displayed on our current screen as edited by Ms. Silvera.
Second.
Second.
All right, I have the motion and a second by Counselor Williams. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, motion carries unanimous. And I will now make a motion to reconsider A.
Second that if you need a second.
I don't have my little plastic chart.
You
Yeah.
need a second?
I got a second.
Okay.
Motion to reconsider, yes. Requires a second. All right. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
if we're going to change it to read just state law, do we need the word current in there? Because,
Okay, well,
right,
right now, we're making a motion to reconsider. If that passes, then we'll discuss what we want it to say.
got it.
So do I have any discussion on the actual motion to reconsider?
No.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. All right, we are reconsidering A, and we're looking at those 3 words, current Texas law. Do we want it to say state law?
Yes, sir.
It sounds like we do.
And
So we're-
as suggested previously, when we get to one where the law has recently changed, then we will discuss putting in the word current.
Gotcha.
But for this one, I believe state law is all we need. All right, she has made that correction. Anybody else thoughts? Yeah, I was just going to say, when I noticed that, I know they kind of mean the same, but if we're going to be consistent throughout our document, we might as well make it consistent. All right. Audience, any thoughts? All right, I'll entertain a motion on this one.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we accept item A as edited by Ms. Silvera as displayed on our current screen.
Second.
All right, have the motion and second by Counselor Marion. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Hearing none, A has been approved again, unanimous. And Aaron, I'm going to make this comment. Sharing the screen and you typing it really helps my motion makers.
Okay.
Trying to remember things, yeah. Being able to see it live, that sure helps. Great idea. And we go to C. Every time I try to scroll down, my screen gets smaller. C, shall section 3.15 be amended to clarify that a required ordinance may regulate persons, property, or both? Question mark. If approved, the second paragraph of section 3.15 would read as follows. An ordinance must be enacted whenever the purpose is to regulate persons, property, or both, whenever there is imposed a penalty, fine, forfeiture, or tax. Question, whenever there is, okay. Whenever the purpose is to set a rate to be paid by consumers, whenever an ordinance is required by state law or this charter, or when an ordinance is amended, the authority of the council to legislate to accomplish any public purpose shall be subject only to the following.
So, Mr. Mayor, one of the discussions I had today was about the fact that there's no list after this. So you either need to recommend adding a list or we need to delete that sentence.
Okay, I was just about to ask that because I'm like, as soon as I put that there, I'm gonna have 100 questions going, where's the following?
Right. There is no, I thought there was a enumerated list, but apparently there's not for this section. Not in the version of the charter that I have access to that was as it was adopted. So I don't know why this reads this way. It was before my time, but we should address it.
Okay, I have a grammatical question on the first line. Whenever there is imposed a penalty, is that proper, or should it say whenever there is an imposed penalty fine?
I think it's whenever no, I think that it can read this way, whenever there is imposed a penalty, fine, forfeiture, or tax. Because it's not just penalty, it's the list of things.
Okay,
It's wonky. If you want to fix it, we have a chance to fix it.
or should it say a fine, a forfeiture, or a tax? I don't know.
I don't think we need the A in front of each of them, but if you want it to read differently here, this is your shot.
I'm asking other people what they thought. I have an English teacher in the audience somewhere, so. Yes, Counselor Davila.
I have a question for Aaron. Is there anything actually gained by including the word both? Wouldn't it be just as easy to say regulate persons or property?
You could do that. It would result in, it could be both, but if you have persons, I think the rationale was previously it said person,
315.
and property.
I think for clarity purpose that we should leave the both in there, because I think that was the issue brought up initially. It was unclear whether it was and or.
Yeah, the previous language had an and. So
Persons
and
yeah.
property, which meant you had to do both in an ordinance. And the new language allows you to do one or the other or both. You could have all three different types.
Yes, Councilor Marion.
Thank you, Mayor. I am the English teacher in the audience. So really the way that it's written right now is more your legalese, and it's perfectly fine the way that it's written. If you wanted to rewrite it, you could. The only suggestion I would make if you want to rewrite it is to modify to whenever there is a penalty, fine, forfeiture, or tax imposed. You could do that. Right now, like I said, it's just in the legalese form, which is also perfectly correct.
Okay. And Councilor Davila, did we answer your question? Are you okay with leaving it in there?
Yeah, I just don't see the need to say both. If it's one or the other, it certainly has to be both.
I think there could certainly be the argument that someone says, am I muted?
No.
No, you're good.
Okay, I think that certainly there could be the argument that says it means this or that. It can't be both. It's both, so it's not this or that. So maybe leaving it in is just the safest route. So it leaves no question.
Yeah, that's my thought.
I'm fine with that. I just didn't see that it added anything.
All right, anybody else on council? All right, Mr. Durbin, I saw your hand up a while ago. Did we answer your question or?
Yeah, Kevin spouted the same thing I was going to, so we're good.
All right. Anybody else from the audience have any comments? All right, if not, I'll entertain a motion for C.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we accept item C as edited by Ms. Silvera on the screen.
Second.
All right, I have the motion and the second by Councilor Marion. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed?
Aye.
Was that an aye in favor? Councilor Davila?
Yes.
Oh, okay. It was delayed. It was,
Yes, I
I
said
got
aye.
something, so, okay. Motion carries unanimous. And we go to D. D, shall the first paragraph of section 3.16 be amended to be consistent? I think we want that to say in accordance with state law regarding enactment of ordinances. If approved, the first paragraph of section 3.16 would read as follows. Section 3.16, procedure to enact legislation. Every ordinance shall be introduced in written or printed form and shall have a clearly summarized and fully descriptive title or caption. The reading aloud of the descriptive caption of the ordinance shall suffice as a reading of the ordinance in its entirety, provided that a written or printed copy thereof has been furnished to each member of the council prior to such meeting or at such meeting without objection by a member of the council. A majority of the members of the council present and voting may require an ordinance to be read in its entirety. All ordinances to be enacted by the council shall be considered, and the descriptive caption of such ordinance read in open meeting of the council at a minimum of one council meeting. Any council member may, by request made on the record at the meeting, require a second reading. The affirmative vote of the majority of the members of the council present and voting, except as otherwise required by statute or this chapter, shall be necessary to adopt any ordinance. All right. This one's long, so I want to start with the actual language before we get to the description. Did anybody, I saw she changed title or caption to title and caption. Is there anything else we're seeing? Oh, it's been furnished. Okay. No.
Good.
All right. The description. I think in our FAQs, if nothing else, we're going to have to describe this better. Is there anything that should be added to the description? I mean, it says.
Mr. Mayor, in our, in the explanation, in the FAQ document, we could explain that state law requires that a caption that summarizes the purpose of the ordinance be provided. I don't know if it's necessary for the descriptive part of this measure, but if you think so, we can certainly change it.
Okay. Thoughts, Councilor Davila?
Had to turn my mic on. Aaron, this is a question about the wording that says a majority of the members of council. Isn't it possible for just one council member to request the reading of the descriptor?
Let's see, the affirmative vote of the majority of members of the council required by statute or this charter to adopt any ordinance. Any ordinance must be adopted by a simple majority unless state law requires a different percentage vote. For example, your budget ordinance has to be approved by 60% or supermajority. There are other ordinances that have very specific requirements for the vote. For example, if you want to overturn the decision of a recommendation of denial from P&Z, it requires a 3/4 vote. So the minimum vote required for any ordinance to be adopted, though, is a majority of the members of council present and voting.
Okay, so
It is accurate.
I'm
Did
not
I
hearing
answer something?
Mr. Davila.
Yes,
And I can't see anybody, so y'all will have to speak.
that's not my question.
Arch, you may want to try and turn off your video and we might be able to hear you better.
I couldn't understand.
My question has to do with the reading in its
Oh,
entirety.
yes, a couple sentences up. Hang on one second.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Can you
I
hear
know
now?
your question. Let me check for you. 1 second. I want to verify what the correct answer is. So,
while you're doing that,
Okay, yeah. This has to do with the reading.
yes, sir.
I have a question. I have a question on the reading also.
Okay. Oh, where did it go?
all right. You want to ask it now, Councilor Williams, or?
Yeah, if it says that the ordinance has to be read in its entirety. If we're making just a change to a specific ordinance, wouldn't we just cover the change in the ordinance versus the whole entire ordinance? Like if you're looking at a fence ordinance and we're trying to review a fence ordinance, we wouldn't want to read the whole fence order if we're just changing one section of the ordinance. I'm just asking for clarification.
Hey, Dave, are you reading the second sentence? Because it says the reading aloud of the descriptive caption of the ordinance shall suffice as a reading of the ordinance in its entirety.
Okay. Okay.
All right, so I'll ask my question now. Down at the bottom, it says any council member may, by request made on the record, require a second reading. Okay, so any council member may request, and then up here that we're kind of discussing right now, a majority of the members of the council present and voting may require an ordinance to be read in its entirety. Okay, so I understand that if a simple majority votes, present and votes, they'll require it. We can require the ordinance to be read in its entirety. What it doesn't say is who makes the request. Can any council member request and then, make the motion that it be read and then we vote? Because how do you get to the majority vote without a council member making the request?
If I may, Mayor,
Yes.
I believe in the debate of ordinance. In the debate, I believe a council member can make that request that it be read in its entirety, rather than just the caption.
Okay, does that take a motion?
I wouldn't think so, but I'm not legal either.
Mayor, can you see or
Your
hear me?
vote, you're voting. In order to take an official vote, I think you have to have a motion in a second.
No, that's not, that's,
Council Prince. Council Prince.
I'm just going to say, to me, I think the language may be a little confusing, but I think it's clear. It says what's currently in there says reading the descriptive caption is sufficient unless the council votes, and it would be standard council process, which is a motion and a second and a vote. But unless the council votes to read the full thing, that's the second part of this. And then the third part is any council member may request that it be read yet again in full. So that's what's in there right now. There's kind of 3 steps. By default, it's the descriptive caption only. Council can by vote require reading the full thing. One council member, after that, one council member can say, I need you to read it again. That's the way I read it as written right now. Whether that's the legal required and appropriate process is a great question.
So I've just looked at chapters 51, 52, and 53 with regard to the authority of powers of the city, adoption of ordinances and municipal ordinances, and none of that. The law is silent as to the requirement regarding reading it in full. So that's something that you need to decide if you want to change it, and we can amend it if you feel like it's unclear, but it's not something that's specifically required by law. So you have to have a simple majority to vote on to approve any ordinance, but the reading part of it is up to you, how you do that part of the process. Does that help?
Yeah.
Mayor, if I might,
Yes.
that helps me, and I'm really fairly comfortable with the way this paragraph reads as is. I will concur with Councilor Prince that I think while it may be a little bit clunky, it lays it out there clearly that you reading the caption will suffice unless the council votes as a whole to read the whole thing. And then after that, a single member can ask for a second reading if they so desire.
Okay. What does it say unless council votes?
It says a majority of the members of council present and voting may require an ordinance to be read in its entirety.
Okay.
It's about in the middle of that paragraph.
Yeah, I see. That was my, yeah.
And I would argue our standard rules of procedure would govern how we do that.
That was the part that I was objecting.
Okay. I'm just trying to think, we're sitting in the meeting and somebody says, hey, I want this to be read in its entirety. So then we got to make a motion, take the vote. Our rules of procedure say that we don't need to, if y'all are comfortable that we don't need to put that in here, I'm okay. I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew how we got to getting to that majority.
Yeah, so the charter governs. So if there's a conflict between the charter and our rules of procedure, the charter will govern. But where the charter is silent, the rules of procedure can fill that gap. So just to make sure we're all on the same page.
All right. Well, if everybody's comfortable with it, I'm okay. I just wanted to make sure it was clear enough. Yes, Councilor Davila.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on the idea that this is all about the reading of descriptive caption versus the entire thing. I'll remind you that we, in the past, used to read the ordinance in its entirety as it was presented, and then it was pointed out that the caption was sufficient, and that's more or less what we've done kind of by habit. But I believe, it was my understanding at the beginning, that we had the option, and it was just a matter of taking the road where you read the caption, and if somebody wants to hear the entire thing read, then it is then reread.
I don't think I have ever been at a council meeting where an entire ordinance has been read. Ever.
Yeah.
Remember, this is talking about the ordinance in its entirety being read, not the caption, not the title, not the description, but the entire ordinance. That's what this is talking about.
Yeah, not that little box that says what we're considering.
Right.
Okay, thank you. That's where I was confused.
Okay. Okay. So were you, Mayor, I'll let you.
Yeah, I think that little box is where we could put the caption, and then that suffices without having to read the whole ordinance. Because, yeah, I don't think we've ever read the entire ordinance, because it could take forever if we had to read the whole ordinance.
Yeah, it would take forever in certain cases.
All right, anybody else? All right, anybody from the audience, thoughts on this one? All right, I'll entertain a motion for D.
Mayor, I would make a motion that we accept item D as amended by Ms. Silvera on the screen.
Second.
A second.
All right, I have the motion and the second this time by Counselor Williams. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. And we go to E. All right, E, shall section 3.19 be amended to refer to a code of ordinances, require that all amendments be codified and maintained by the city secretary, and to require access to all other adopted codes for purchase or on the city website. If approved, section 3.19 would read as follows. Section 3.19, adoption of code. The city may adopt by ordinance a code of ordinances. All amendments to the code of ordinances shall be codified and maintained by the city secretary. The city may adopt any standard code, regulations, and/or standards for buildings, plumbing, electrical, air conditioning, and heating, and other trades and construction, and establish appropriate penalties for their violation. Copies of adopted codes, trade regulations, and standards and technical regulations shall be referenced and linked on the city website and made public in a form to allow any competent individual to obtain a copy or view those adopted codes, trade regulations and standards, and technical regulations, whether by purchase or internet. Yes, Counselor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Silvera beat me to the question mark issue. Good job. Thanks, Aaron. The one question I had is at the beginning of the text that would go on the ballot, the city may, and I thought in our marked up one, we said the city shall. And so I just wanted to know if we made a conscious decision.
We did.
You did.
To go with may instead of shall?
Mhm.
Oh,
My notes reflect that everything but may, everything but the may for this one.
okay. And I'm sorry, just refresh my memory. What was the purpose? Because I mean, may is you can if you want, and shall is you're gonna do it.
Mayor,
Yes, Counselor Prince.
I believe this was one of the few motions that I made the other night, Kevin, and that's why I remember it. I suggested we stay with the word may instead of shall, because we have the option to adopt by ordinance, but by state law, we're not required to do ordinances. And so there was no reason to change it. So it's fine as is, and therefore, why change it? That was kind of the logic.
Okay, fair enough. Thank y'all.
And, Mr. Durbin may weigh in with a comment that corrects my thinking on that.
Well, and that was kind of what I was thinking, because there might actually be a standard code regulation or something that we don't want to adopt, and we don't want to make it so that we have to. I like the may. Anybody else? All right, audience, Mr. Durbin.
Yes, just in reply to Mr. Prince, the may and the shall only applies to the adoption by ordinance of a code of ordinances. the fact is you've already adopted a code of ordinances. You've already got one. And I believe that we chose shall because the code of ordinances is much more readable and it's much easier than piles and piles of ordinances that are not codified. So for the sake of the electorate and the public, we liked the codification of ordinances when appropriate, and so we as a committee, that's what we were aiming for. We did not want to see a reversal of that policy, and I don't think anybody'd be crazy enough to do it, but why allow it if otherwise? So that's why we went with shall. But obviously, at this point, it's all in y'all's hands.
Well, and now that you point that out, when I look down at the second sentence, it's where it says the city may adopt any. That's the may kind of that I was referring to.
Yeah.
So that first sentence where it says the city shall adopt by ordinance or may adopt, I don't have a problem with shall being right there. Yes, Council Prince.
I'll say, no harm, no foul on that one. I'm good either way, and the argument for shall seems fine to me. I do, before we leave this and go to vote, I do have some thoughts on the descriptive language, but I'll wait until you're ready for that.
All right. Do we want to change that to shall then? I think there was 3 of us that liked the shall.
Yeah, I do.
The first shot, yes.
The first
Okay.
shall, yes.
Aaron, if you would, there you go. Shaq. All right. Councilor Davila, you have your hand up?
Yes, I do. There's a comma after the shall. I don't think that's necessary, is it?
There we go.
City shall.
Shall adopt by ordinance. Thank you.
All right. Anybody else on council language? All right. Council Prince, your descriptive. Oh, hang on a second.
Can you hear me okay? My camera's coming and going, so I'm not sure if I'm good.
Yeah, real quick, stand by real quick. I saw Marion's. Did you have something on the language, Councilor Marion?
I did, kind of going along with what Councilor Davila just pointed out. I also don't think that the comma after ordinance is necessary. The city shall adopt by ordinance a code of ordinances. You don't need the comma there. It's completely discretionary.
Yeah, both of those were deleted on the red line I sent up, so I'm not sure how they snuck back in.
Okay. Hey, sometimes there's late nights and fast typing going on, so it happens.
Yep.
That's why we got 20 eyes looking at it today, 20 sets of eyes. Okay, Councilor Prince, now your description.
So I'm the big motivation, as at least I was thinking of it and described it in the last session for this change, is to get the city out of the middle, not being a middleman for delivering things that are third-party or documents that may be intellectual property and should be available by other means. So as currently written, the city has to provide printed copies if someone asks for it. And really the benefit of this change is getting out of the middle. That's not captured at all in the descriptive language up front. And I'm trying to figure out, what to propose in order to capture that. And I'm struggling with the sentence, but I think we need something in that first paragraph that captures that. Because right now, there's nothing in that descriptive sentence that says why this change matters. It's not inaccurate, but it's not motivational, if you will.
Okay. Could that be something that could just be put in the FAQs, or you think it should be in here as well?
Well, to me, that would fit in the category, if I'm a voter and I've not looked at 90% of the voters are not going to look at the FAQ, right? And if I'm a voter not looking at the FAQ, and I read this paragraph, this is one where I'm like, I don't get what this is about. I guess I'll vote against it. Whereas I think if we could come up with the point of this is for the city to not have to provide printed copies of third-party intellectual property or codes that are available on the website. Rather, the city would provide a reference to and means of access, something like that. I'm worried this one would miss passing simply because people look at it and say, I don't see why I care about this.
Okay. So access to all other adopted codes that are the intellectual property of others, intellectual property of. For purchase or on the city website.
Do you think that's needed? And to require access to all other adopted codes that are intellectual of others in lieu of providing printed copies? Because we're providing access to it, providing access via purchase. I struggled with this one.
So
Maybe instead of, I'm sorry if I may, instead of saying and to require access, we could say something like and to provide means of access to all other adopted codes, no longer requiring the city to provide printed copies where inappropriate. So something along those lines. I'm sorry, it's getting pretty wordy. I'll stop making wording suggestions here.
Paul, do you have an example?
The electric code, the National Electric Code is a copyrighted document. And we have adopted certain versions of that. And so we can provide a link to where people can buy a copy, but we should not be providing copyrighted material to others for free. That's
Gotcha. Got it.
So then you could scratch that, yeah. Okay, no longer to provide where inappropriate. That deleted the part about that also deleted the property, the section that referred to third, there we go, intellectual property of others. There we go.
Tell me where you want me to.
Okay, no longer requiring the city to provide printed copies where inappropriate.
Where inappropriate.
That are the intellectual properties of others.
That helps me as written. I think that's better.
You like this?
Is it that are the intellectual property or that is the intellectual property?
Well, copies are the copies of other codes. It's plural,
Copies.
but
Provided printed copies that were that. Okay.
Would you change others?
I'm a math guy, not an English guy.
Would you change others to third party? Or would that make it better? Third party. Would that help? I don't know.
I'm good with it. Councilor Davila?
I have a question. Yes, I have a question. Is there any value in having where inappropriate?
yeah, if
That
we're going to say
phrase,
that
is that
intellectual
necessary?
property of others, it doesn't. Yeah, the where inappropriate is a bit superfluous if we're talking about intellectual property of others.
right.
I think.
Yeah, I'm saying just remove that part.
I agree, Arch. Good suggestion.
This is taking me a minute because I don't think it's actually grammatically correct.
Replace that with,
There's something,
replace that,
Yeah, right after city secretary and to means of, there's a word missing there.
Provide.
Provide. Oh.
Yes,
Provide
I think
means
you're
of,
right.
okay.
There you go. That's
the
better.
word of is,
codes, comma, should there be a comma there, no longer requiring the city to provide printed parties for purchase. Okay, for purchase on the city, for purchase or on the city website is words I had in originally. I don't know that that's necessary.
Yeah.
Okay.
That could go.
Yes.
And then
Aaron,
I'm
the only other
still,
thing,
Mhm.
Councilor Marion?
thank you. The only other thing is, the very first
make another
line,
suggestion?
shall
Another
section 3 point,
grammatical correct.
Hold on a
do I-
second. Hold on a second, Arch. Councilor Marion has the floor.
after, right there where your cursor is, Aaron, after code of ordinances, the comma goes before the quotation marks, not after. There you go. That's it. Thank you.
All right, Councilor Davila?
Do I have the A?
I actually wasn't saying anything.
Oh. Okay.
Mayor, if I might.
Oh, yes, Councilor Sullivan. Sorry, I get to reading and I'm not looking at my
Yeah.
pictures.
We can delete
Not a-
this.
Not a problem. I'm still not sure I understand the reading of that, the very first part. So shall section 3.19 be amended to refer to a code of ordinances require that all amendments, it just reads funny to me.
I think the reason it reads funny is because so the last like clause has a 2 in front of it, but this one doesn't. So if you want to make it parallel, then you should insert the 2 before require. So shall section 3.19 be amended to refer to a code of ordinances to require that all amendments be codified and maintained by the city secretary and to provide. Either include all the 2s or take them all out. And that at least keeps it parallel.
There you go. Okay, thank you.
Does that answer your question, Councilor Sullivan? Because the original language, the existing language today says the city may, by ordinance, adopt a codification of its ordinances and any standard code regulations or standards for buildings, plumbing, et cetera, et cetera. So in this, we are referring to a code of ordinance instead of adopt a codification of its ordinances. Semantics.
That last 2 that you put in, I'm totally comfortable with it now. It reads much better to me.
No longer requiring the city to provide that are at the end of okay, I like the way it's written right now.
Yep.
We got a squiggly line under there that popped up.
Mayor, if I may.
Yes, Councilor Davila.
Yes, wait a minute. I got something in. I was thinking that in order to simplify that, the last part of that section was referring to printed copies.
We can't
Could it just
understand.
say provide printed copies of intellectual property?
Printed copies of intellectual property. Yeah, you could say provide printed
Yes.
copies of third-party intellectual property.
Because we're talking about printed copies.
So,
That sounds fine to me.
like that. And delete the others? Is that better? Is that what you're looking for, Counselor
Yes.
Davila?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Anybody else? All right, anybody from the audience? Comments? Language or description? All right, if we're good, I'll entertain a motion on E.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we accept item E as modified by Ms. Silvera on the screen.
Second.
All right, I have the motion and the second by Counselor Marion. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. And we go to F. All right, F, shall the first paragraph of section 4.01 be amended to require at least 5 affirmative votes to appoint the city manager and raise or lower the city manager's compensation? If approved, the first paragraph of section 4.01 would read as follows. Section 4.01, city manager. The council shall appoint a city manager who shall be chosen primarily on the basis of his or her executive and administrative training, experience, and ability. The affirmative vote of 5 members or more of the council shall be required to appoint a person as a city manager or change the city manager's compensation package. Within 6 months after employment, the city manager shall reside within the city unless the council approves an outside residence. The city manager shall receive compensation as determined by the council. The compensation shall be agreed upon prior to employment, and the council may contract with the city manager to establish the terms of employment. The council shall reserve the right to raise or lower the compensation at its sole discretion by the vote of 5 members or more. The city manager may be removed or suspended at the sole discretion of the council by an affirmative vote of 5 members of the council. Okay, question from me. Within 6 months after employment, the city manager shall reside within the city. Should that say city limits? And we have 5 members or more. Somebody will have to refresh my memory. We've got 5 members or more everywhere except at the very end, and it says affirmative vote of 5 members. Should it say or more?
it would be important to have it be consistent. This is the language that was recommended by the Charter Review Committee. I think grammatically, it sounds better that you say at least 5 members, or you say 5 or more members. But whatever you choose, let's make it consistent.
Well, we've already got 5 members or more twice. I would say just add or more to that one. Councilor Davila? Can't hear you.
How about a minimum affirmative vote of 5? A minimum affirmative vote of 5.
I don't know, that seems a little redundant to me, but I mean, 5, when you say 5 or more, that kind of says the minimum
Minimum.
is 5, but I don't know. That's just my thought. Yes, Counselor Sullivan?
Exactly.
I think what Mr. Davila is saying is instead of saying 5 members or more, say a minimum of 5 members. I think he's providing alternative language. And
No.
others, I think Aaron said something to the effect of at least 5 members. I think if we were to change it, I'd prefer at least 5 members in all the 3 places. But I'm good with it the way it is as well. And I just wanted to second your comment, Mayor, about within the city limits. I thought that was a good edit.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't care whether it says at least or minimum. I was just trying to make it so Aaron didn't have to make too many changes.
It's easy peasy. This is your time to get it right. I can edit however you want it.
All right. Well,
Yeah.
whatever they suggest.
Can I just ask a question?
Of course.
Because I missed the charter. There's one sentence in there that says the council shall have the right to raise or lower the compensation of as its sole discretion of a vote of 5 members or more. When you contract with someone to do a job in that calendar year, you can't change someone's salary in the middle of a year. You could say that they're not doing the job and you can remove them or suspend them. But if you hire me to do a job at $150,000, you can't in the middle of a year say, okay, I'm only going to give you 125. I'm not understanding that part. I'm just trying to understand that part.
So the contract provisions, and this gives the council the authority to raise or lower the compensation at your discretion. If that ends up conflicting with the contract, then that becomes a contract discussion between the council and the city manager. You're looking at it in terms of lowering it. I know that that's a concern, but the converse is also true. In theory, if you look at it on the contract, you couldn't raise it. So you couldn't give her a raise. So it's, if you lower it, there are terms within her contract that address reasons why that type of action would take place, and it may end up, you'd end up in contract discussions with that city manager, and they may have a cause of action, but this charter provision is separate and apart from it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have the right to do it. It would be.
But does not the last line address that of that paragraph? If the city
Well,
manager,
that's the removal or suspension. That's not changing the pay.
got it. Okay. All right. I just wanted to understand it. Thank you.
And this was also one where the 5 members or more was put in so that you couldn't on a 4-3 vote or a 4-2 vote lower their compensation to 0 and basically force them out.
I got it. I'm good. I'm sorry. I just wanted to understand it.
Okay. Anybody else on council? Mr. Durbin?
Yeah, I would agree that whatever language you decide regarding the 5 members or more than 5 members, or at least 5 members, should be consistent all the way through. We just missed that last one because we had our own fast typing and late nights. So, but yeah, please spread it down to that last one as well.
All right, so I've heard different suggestions. How do y'all want it to read while Aaron's making corrections?
Mayor, I'm fine with the 5 members or more, and just modifying the one. That's fine by me.
Okay.
I'm fine with it.
All right. Well, if we're at that point, then I'll entertain a motion for F.
Mayor, I would make a motion that we accept item F as modified by Ms. Silvera on the screen.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second by Councilor Williams. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. And we go to G. Dun, dun, dun. G. Shall the third paragraph of section 4.01, paragraph 3, that's kind of redundant, be amended to correct a reference from subsection, maybe it's not redundant, correct a reference from subsection to the entire charter regarding investigations by the city council. If approved, the word charter would be substituted for the word subsection. And the third paragraph of section 4.01 would read as follows. The council, except as provided for in section 3.06 of this charter, shall direct and supervise the city manager only by majority vote, except for the purposes of inquiries and investigations under this charter. The city council or its members shall deal with employees who are subject to the supervision of the city manager solely through the city manager. Neither the council nor its members shall give orders to or in any way exercise the influence of their office on such officer or employee, either publicly or privately, except as otherwise provided in this charter. All right. Thoughts? Let's see.
I think that deletion of that second paragraph 3 was the right move. Ms. Silvera's already taken care of that. I think that was the right move.
Okay.
I had noted that.
Well, I said that, then I got to thinking, well, maybe there was 3 paragraphs in the third paragraph of section. I was like, man, maybe there's 3 paragraphs twice. I don't know. But yeah, just reading it, it just seemed redundant. Okay, shall direct the supervisor only by majority, except for the.
This was only the change from subsection to charter. So
Yeah.
that's really the only substantive change that
Okay.
was recommended. That's what this is all about.
All
Because
right.
there's no subsection to refer to.
I'm good. I have no further questions. Anybody else on council?
Nope.
Anybody in the audience? All right. I'll entertain a motion for G.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we accept item G as modified by Ms. Silvera on the screen.
Second.
Second.
All right, I have the motion and Councilor Marion got the second in. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. I think that puts us halfway. H. Shall section 4.03 be amended to comply with state law? I think that should, let's see, in accordance with state law regarding appointment of municipal judges and court clerks and compensation of municipal judges. If approved, section 4.03 would read as follows. Section 4.03 Municipal Court. A municipal court designated as the municipal court of record of the city of Lago Vista is hereby established. The court shall have jurisdiction over all matters, offenses, and issues as now or hereafter provided by state law, and all other matters, offenses, and issues as provided by ordinance not inconsistent with state law. The municipal judge and any associate municipal judge deemed necessary shall be appointed by the council. Compensation for the municipal judge and any associate judges shall be set by the city council. A court clerk and such deputies as deemed necessary shall be appointed pursuant to city ordinance and state law. The court clerk and any deputy shall have the power to administer oaths and affidavits, make certificates, affix the court seal, and perform any and all duties authorized by state law or ordinance or directed by the presiding judge. All costs, fees, special expenses, and fines imposed by the municipal court shall be paid into the city treasury for the use and benefit of the city unless otherwise required by state law. Thoughts? Councilor Sullivan.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Silvera did have a note out to the side that it would be, it's possible that we add back in nominated by city manager and appointed by council. I kind of like having that there, to be honest with you. I think it's the appropriate way for us to move forward.
I like that too.
Okay. Is that for the court clerk and deputies?
I believe it was for the municipal judge and associate municipal judges.
Okay.
State law is silent as to nomination, this concept of nomination. It only speaks to appointment. So however you want to do that, if you want them to nominate, but ultimately council has to make the decision and appointment.
Well,
And
it's,
again, Mayor, if I might, to me, if we take that out, that means we're changing our entire process that we currently use to vet judges initially and then bring them forward to council. Because as of, up to this point, it's been the city manager that has taken on that job. And then they bring forward candidates to the council, and then the council appoints the one that they want to. I don't know that should change. If we leave that out, then it's silent as to how that process will move forward.
and we're not the ones vetting the candidate. I mean,
So this,
it's the city manager that's in contact with each of the candidates and vets them. And
Are we wanting the city manager to do all the vetting of the candidates and then just nominate one? And if so, what's the process that the city manager uses?
that can be spelled out in either a procedural document or by ordinance or by policy adopted by resolution. Or it can be in the actual charter. So those are your choices.
Well, and Mayor, if I might, we talked about the fact that we didn't take in the suggestion to have the qualifications of municipal judge in the charter, but that we thought we might need to put together an ordinance that would define that. Quite frankly, we could, in that same ordinance, we could also define how the city manager goes through the process of bringing forward candidates to council.
Okay, yeah, because I would go with that. I know we didn't change some of the other positions because they directly reported to the city manager. The judge doesn't. I just want to make sure we got a good process, and if that's done in ordinance or something, well, we can address that later. Okay. Yes, Councilor Prince.
To me, in this case, less is more. I think the important point is who's appointing the judges. Describing the process of getting to appointment, I would say we don't have to do that in this charter. There's nothing in this language that would prevent us from following the same basic process we've followed in the past and having the city manager do a whole lot of work on our behalf. And I think Ms. Silvera just described several options as to how we could do that. But I don't see that we need to tie our hands on the process in the charter document. So that would be my comment on that. And then I want to also explicitly ask a question in about midway down in the paragraph, the sentence that says a court clerk and such deputies as deemed necessary shall be appointed. And the question that I have I think in the markup from the committee, there was actually the phrase as deemed necessary by the city council. And I asked Ms. Silvera earlier today if we needed to explicitly include by the city council as the body deeming it necessary. Her feedback was if it doesn't say otherwise, then it would be the city council that deems it necessary. So we might want to clarify by inserting deemed necessary by the city council, but what I'm hearing is it's not absolutely required.
And she did put that in there.
Oh, it's in there now? Okay. So
Well, I added it
since we talked.
so that you could see where it goes. Y'all, I just need instruction of whether you want to leave it.
I'm good with that change.
Okay. All right, anybody else? Council? Yes, Council Prince.
Different subject. Up in the descriptive title, I'm wondering whether we need to kind of describe more what's going on here and say that we're changing this from being city manager heavy to being council, really driving the process. So come up with some language like, in accordance with state law requiring appointment of municipal judges and court clerks and compensation municipal judges, and this would be the new language, to have city council be responsible rather than city manager.
That's changing the process, isn't it?
Well, but that's what we're doing here. But Councilor Prince, I would just ask this. At the beginning, we say in accordance with state law. To me, that's the important part. And I understand wanting to provide additional descriptor there, but could that not go in the FAQ?
Yeah, actually, thank you, Councilor Sullivan. In this case, because we're saying in accordance with state law, that's a big motivator, which I think is probably the top level point, and I'm actually good with that. Just leaving it with that.
Okay, awesome.
Mayor, if I may,
Yes, Councilor Davila.
I'd like to direct Aaron's attention to the part of this particular section that has to do with the court clerk. It says the court clerk and any deputy shall have the power to administer oaths and affidavits, make certificates, affix the court seal, and perform any and all duties authorized by state law or ordinance. And then the addition there is or directed by presiding judge. Is or directed by presiding judge really necessary?
So the previous language, I think, said or city manager, and it's important to point out that for purposes of court actions, the clerks report to the presiding judge. That's what state law prescribes. So it is a change, but it's related to what the state law says with regard to the duties and powers and work of the clerks when they're in that role.
So if it's provided by state law, do we really need that? I mean, seems to be redundant.
That's a good point, sir. Very good point. You would want to delete that because the previous version of it had city manager, so you could just delete that.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
All right, anybody else? All right, Mr. Durbin, I'll go to the audience.
I also wanted to point out that when the committee talked about this, when we talked about the city manager nominating candidates, we didn't really want to preclude her ability to appoint more than one should she come across two, have two really good candidates, or wanted to give you guys the option. So when you do go to draft it up in an ordinance, you may want to keep that, and you drafting up the process. That's something you might want to keep in mind. Thank you.
All right.
And Mr. Durbin, you said appoint two, but you meant nominate, correct?
I meant nominate two. My bad.
Okay.
Yep.
Oh, thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, if we're at that point, I'll entertain a motion for H.
Sorry, I
Oh, yes.
did have a comment. So I had proposed that, keeping it simple, we would not include the language, which is shown on the screen right now, nominated by the city manager but leave that open for ordinance or resolution or however we want to do it. It's currently on the screen. So before we get the Kevin Sullivan on the screen version, let's decide whether we want those 5-6 words on the screen or not. I would propose it just we delete those nominated by the city manager and go back to the black version.
I'm good with that.
But hang on, Aaron. I hear what Councilor Prince is saying, keeping it clean and simple, but currently we have no ordinance that lays this out, and this has been a process that we have followed, and I don't understand that. I don't think that it's a bad precedent to get away from, and don't understand a reason why we wouldn't call this out, unless there's thoughts that once we get to the ordinance that we may want to change that.
My camera's frozen. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
I guess I'm in the space of retaining flexibility. So if we say it's nominated by the city manager and appointed by the council, that in most cases may be just fine, and that maybe probably would be the process we would follow. I can imagine scenarios where the city manager doesn't bring us candidates that we like, but the candidates that they want. And again, I'm trying to, as Ms. Marion reminded us last week or last session, we don't need to be thinking about the current people, but about the process and future. And I can imagine scenarios where we decide we want a different process for nomination, and if the charter ties our hands on nomination, ties the council's hands on nomination, it's just more difficult than it needs to be. So I'm looking at flexibility where flexibility is appropriate. That's my reasoning.
Yeah, and that was my thought earlier. But then when we talked about the ordinance policy that would be created later, that's where I thought we could address that. Because I know in past city managers, I know that the nomination, or as it said back then, currently says appointee, was brought to council by the city manager, but in the process that the city manager used, it wasn't just the city manager that was making the recommendation. They were putting together, staff panels and stuff. And it was the panel that was actually coming up with, and I just want to make sure that whether we put it in here or we do it in an ordinance or somehow that we're not making it such that the nomination is coming strictly from one person. And, you know, to echo those reasons that you and Councilor Marion, you know, said. So. Councilor Davila.
Mayor, if I may. Yes, I'm in support of what's been proposed by Councilor Sullivan. I don't really see any reason to cut the city manager out from actually doing the vetting of the potential candidates. I just don't see that at all.
I agree.
Councilor
And Mayor,
Sullivan.
I see that as a valuable tool.
thank you, Mayor. Here's what I would propose. Let's leave it nominated by city manager, but let's have the intent that we're going to create an ordinance that will define the process the city manager has to go through, which is, you know, involving other staff members, as you mentioned, Mayor. I know that's how Josh described how he did in the past, and I like that. And it wasn't just a single person, but like Chief Danny and others got involved with helping him determine who he would nominate.
We can put that in the ordinance.
Yep, that would go in the ordinance.
All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilor Weatherly.
yeah, we don't need the flexibility in the charter. There is nothing that demands that because the city manager nominates somebody, that we appoint them. If she brings us somebody, we don't like that individual that she has nominated, we simply don't put them into the position and direct them to go back and find somebody else. So I don't think that there's the necessity for Mr. Prince's flexibility in the charter, because the council has all the flexibility in the world in deciding who we want to put into those positions.
All right. Anybody else on council? All right, I'll go to Mr. Durbin.
I just want to point out from a historical perspective that when I was initially appointed, the council had appointed everybody as an associate judge, and then the associate judges got together and nominated or voted who they chose as presiding judge, and then put that forward to the city manager. And the city manager took that up to city council. And that's the way it worked the first two times that the two terms that I served, both terms that I served. The system you're talking about where the city manager put a panel in place and all that sort of nonsense basically was designed to put the judge forward he wanted to put forward, and really had no basis in fact or anything else. If you guys didn't realize that was a political show, then you know, but leaving the flexibility in the ordinance to do something other than what you're currently doing is fine, and to give the city manager a chance to weigh in is also fine. But y'all are talking like it was done that way forever, and it wasn't. It was done that way one time, specifically to get the judge in that the manager wanted. So the metrics and all that other nonsense really can be buggered up if a city manager so chooses. And just from a historical standpoint, I think you need to leave the city manager the breadth to determine how to select nominees, but now you're going to be responsible for who is finally selected. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Prince.
I'll just go back to Mr. Sullivan's comment. I think his approach is a good one, that we leave this nominated by the city manager in. Clearly that was the consensus I was hearing back from folks, and then just drive a process through ordinance later.
Yep. I'm good with it.
All right, anybody else? All right, well, for at that point, I'll entertain a motion for H.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we accept item H as modified by Ms. Silvera on the screen.
Second.
All right, I have the motion and a second by Counselor Williams. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. And we go to I. All right, I, shall section 5.01 be amended to delete an obsolete sentence regarding prior council members' terms and to make non-substantive corrections, ? If approved, section 5.01 would read as follows. Section 5.01 city elections, beginning with the general city election to be held in 2016, and for each successive general city election, the general city election shall be held annually on the uniform election date in November in accordance with the election laws of the state of Texas. All terms of office for all members shall be as set forth in section 3.01. The council shall fix the places for holding such election, and the city secretary shall give notice of the election in the manner required by the laws of the state of Texas. The council may, by ordinance, call special elections as required or authorized by state law or this charter. The council shall fix the time and places for such special elections, direct the city secretary to give notice thereof, and provide all means for holding same. A certified list of registered voters residing within the city shall be obtained by the city secretary for each election. All city elections shall be held in accordance with state law, this charter, and the ordinances, resolutions, and orders adopted by the council for the conduct of elections. The council shall provide for the election, appoint election judges and other officials, and shall determine and provide for their compensation and for all other expenses of holding municipal elections. In the absence of state law providing regulations for the conduct of any election or any related action or procedure, the council shall provide such regulations by ordinance. Thoughts?
Good with this one.
Just note that
Yeah, I'm
in
good with
our
this one.
just note that in our FAQs, we're probably going to have to make sure everybody's aware of what the obsolete sentence was.
Yeah.
All right. Nobody from council, anybody from the audience? All right. We're at that point. I'll accept the motion for I.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we accept item I as displayed on the screen as amended by Ms. Silvera, because I think she added the question mark.
Second.
Second.
All right. I have the motion and the second by Councilor Marion. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. J. Dun-dun-dun. Shall section, God, these sections are long. Okay. Shall section 6.08 be amended to reduce the percentage of registered voters required for a recall petition? If approved, section 6.08 would read as follows. Section 6.08, power of recall. The power of the city, the people of the city reserve the power to recall the mayor or any other member of the council and may exercise such power by filing with the city secretary a valid petition demanding the removal of the mayor or a council member or members. Such petition shall be signed by qualified voters of the city equal in number to at least 10% of the number of registered voters who resided in the city at the time of the last general city election. The petition shall be signed and verified as required by section 6.12 and shall contain a specific statement of the grounds for which the removal is sought. Once one of the signers of each petition shall make an affidavit that the statements therein made are true. A separate petition is required for each elected official to be recalled. The recall petition process shall begin with the filing of a written notice of intent with the city secretary. This notice shall be signed by 5 qualified voters of the city and shall state the name of the elected official to be recalled. The filing date of this notice shall be the formal beginning of the recall process. All petition signatures shall be collected and the petition filed with the city secretary in accordance with requirements specified in section 6.12. Thoughts?
Mr.
Council
Mayor, do we,
Council Prince?
Descriptive title, I would suggest immediately before the newly added question mark that we say from 20% to 10%.
that was exactly what I was going to suggest.
All right. I was going to say that needed to be put in the FAQs, but if it works here. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Anybody else? Anybody from the audience? All right. Well, if we're in agreement, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we accept item J as modified by Ms. Silvera on the screen.
Second.
All right. I have a motion and a second by Councilor Marion. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. And we go to K. Shall 6.11 be amended to allow a recall petition to be filed against any officer after their initial term? If approved, section 6.11 would read as follows. Section 6.11, limitations on recall. No recall petition may be filed against any officer of the city within 6 months after his or her election or appointment, or within the 3 months preceding the expiration of his or her term of office, or more than once during any 2-year term of office. Looks pretty clear. Yes, Council Pritz.
The title, I think, could be better. And so I have a pretty major change suggestion. I would suggest the title say, shall section 6.11 be amended to allow recall petition limitations to apply equally to newly elected and re-elected officials? Because that's really the point, is we're trying to equal out. If someone's re-elected, it's not different rules. So we're trying to apply the recall, again, I'll say it, shall be amended to allow recall petition limitations to apply equally to newly elected and re-elected officials. And then I would strike the to be filed against any officer after their initial term.
Did I get that right?
My screen is lagging behind, so I don't see it yet.
Okay.
There's some that looks like it's redundant, Aaron.
Okay.
To allow a recall petition, to allow a
Oh.
recall petition.
To allow, okay, yeah, thank you. To allow recall
Yes.
petition limitations to apply equally To
newly
elected and
elected
re-elected officials.
and re-elected officials. And then Ms. Marion is correct. The to allow a recall petition back up front is redundant. There you go.
Okay. Anybody else? All right, anybody from the audience? All right, that's all the comments. Then I'll take a motion on K.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we accept item K as amended by Ms. Silvera on our screen.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second by Councilor Marion. Any further discussion? And all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. And we go to L. All right, shall the first paragraph of section 8.10 be amended to comply or in accordance with state law regarding petitions and bond elections? If approved, the first paragraph of section 8.10 would read as follows. Section 8.10 bonds and other financial obligations. The council shall have the power to borrow money on the credit of the city and to issue bonds, certificates of obligation, warrants, notes, or other evidences of indebtedness for permanent public improvements or for any other public purpose not prohibited by state law or this charter. Notwithstanding any other provision of this charter to the contrary, ordinances authorizing the issuance of bonds, certificates of obligation, warrants, notes, or other evidences of indebtedness, or ordinances authorizing the levy of taxes or the pledge of revenues to secure payment of indebtedness shall require 2 readings. Any petition protesting issuance of bonds or certificates of obligation shall comply with applicable state law, and any election held shall be conducted in the manner for bond elections under Chapter 1251 Government Code. The issuance of bonds, certificates of obligation, warrants, notes, or other evidences of indebtedness shall be subject only to the following limitations.
This is the one that has the numbered. 8, 10.
Okay. And I would guess in the FAQs, do we need to put the following limitations? Because I'm sure somebody's going to want to know what they are.
I mean, we can always add that into this wording if you know, it might be appropriate to do that because it begs the question, what are the limitations? I can always dump that in. That's not a problem. I just had it separated out so that I could track this stuff.
Okay.
If there's A, B, C, D, they're only E, F, hang on. They're six limitations. So I can put those in if that's your recommendation. It sure definitely needs to be available for the public.
Councilor Sullivan?
I would vote for having it on the ballot language, that particular piece. And then the question I had was, I thought that part of the reason why we were doing this one was to call out the 5%, and I'd see that that's not in here. Does state law say 5% and that it would just be redundant, Aaron?
So my notes on this one, yes. Well, no, the issue is that each of the different types of debts call out different percentages.
Okay.
And so on this one, my notes say that I need to bring back language. And so that is why the language I included shall comply with applicable state law, because it depends on what kind of bond or indebtedness it is that determines what the percentage is for petitions.
And so my only question is, are any of the state laws for any of the different types of indebtedness, is there a range provided, or is it always it's 5% or it's 10%?
It's a specific number. They're different.
Okay.
And then there is no provision for that for warrants. So in the chart I provided you for the last council meeting, for CO, state law specifies a petition signed by 5% of the city's qualified voters. For warrants, state law specifies a petition signed by 10% of the city's qualified voters. For notes, they are regulated under Chapter 1431 of the Government Code, but there is no petition requiring an election of the citizens to issue anticipation notes. So it depends on what it is, and that's why I said comply with applicable state law.
Perfect. Okay. Yeah, my only fear was if there was a range specified, then we need to put something in. But if it's a specific number, then it sounds like we're good. Thank you.
It is.
Councilor Prince?
I'm viewing this item and the next one, 8.11, together, frankly. And so in this case, the significant change is the old language says that these things shall not be subject to referendum, right? So the old language says city council can do this stuff and vote, but citizens don't get to call us to the table for a vote. That's just nonsense, right? So we're fixing that to comply with state law, saying that, if the state law says there can be a referendum, then we'll hold it, right? So I kind of like it being worded this way without specific numbers, especially since when we get to the next one in section 8.11, we're going to talk about a 5% number for referendum. So I think the tag team of the two is appropriate as worded. I know we're just doing 8.10, but my thinking on 8.10 is definitely influenced by 8.11.
All right.
Let me add in the language for 8.10 so you'll see it in its entirety before you vote.
Councilor Davila?
Yes, sir. I'm curious about why the indebtedness list includes certificates of obligation. Is that something that we really want to do? Is to tie our hands so that we can't go out to obligate the city for some emergency and having to go to the voters to get that, being required to get approval by the voters to do that? I mean, that's what certificates of obligation are supposed to do, is to give us the ability to react to some emergency where we have to possibly, bring something back online, like our water plant, something of that nature, and it may take a huge amount of money that we have to appropriate to be able to bring that thing back online. So I'm not too sure that I agree that certificates of obligation should be in that list.
I think we had some discussion on that because I brought up the PID bonds to Sarah under this discussion because those are COs. And what happens?
Yeah, Mayor, and I think last week, or the other one, I guess it was last week, geez, the days are all blending together. I think we had some talk or some conversation about the difference between health and safety and things like, if something happens with the sewer system. I remember bringing this up myself, in fact, that if something happened with the sewer, we wanted to be able to take action without having to go to the citizens for a vote. And I'm trying to remember what the conversation.
That was on revenue bonds.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
That was one we decided not to bring forward.
Yep.
We
Okay,
just decided
gotcha.
to leave it the way it was. Yeah.
Thank you, Kevin.
If I can add some more to my statement, Mayor,
All right.
I believe that COs are generally considered non-voter approved debt. So I think that we should hold on to that tool.
I'll let Aaron weigh in on this one.
I just wanted to give you the language that's in 271, chapter 271. 3049. So, this is your requirement. These are your requirements if you are going to issue a notice of intent to issue a certificate of obligation. You are required to post this notice. C says before the date tentatively, this is why there's a 45-day, you have to give notice 45 days before you're going to tentatively pass an ordinance to issue certificates of obligation. And that 45-day notice requirement is to allow the public the opportunity to get a petition signed by the qualified voters, at least 5% of the qualified voters, to require a vote on it. So it's not an automatic vote. It's you give notice that you're going to do it or tentatively may do it. If people don't like that, they can get a petition together and require it to go to a vote. And if it goes to a vote, it goes under 1251.
Meaning their inclusion in this item is appropriate because you mentioned that it's accordance with state law. So
that's right.
We still have the ability to do it, but we could be petitioned to have a vote.
Yes.
All right.
So,
Did that answer your question, Councilor Dubla?
so
Yes, Councilor Williams.
Yes, sir, it does.
So, Mr. Mayor, in a case of a health or emergency situation, we would just use a different form of funding?
Revenue bonds. Because if it's health or safety, yeah, you're probably going under something that's going to be covered by money coming in from utility fees, things like that. You would do a revenue bond.
Okay, thank you.
All right, anybody else? All right, Mr. Durbin.
Yes, and I just wanted to make sure this wasn't an oversight. The committee had changed on 810D that the required public notice of the hearings shall be published once a week for 3 consecutive weeks in a newspaper general circulation, and we added on the city's website. Did you all mean to delete that? Because I know there were other instances throughout the charter where you were where we were putting things on the city website rather than in the double secret probation of the newspaper or general circulation that nobody reads.
Do you have your notes on that one, Aaron?
Yes, sir. My notes indicate that y'all voted not to move forward with that proposed requirement, 810D.
Okay.
Mayor, if yeah, thanks. My memory on that is that in our effort to not have 44 ballot measures, we felt like we're already putting in things on the website and we don't need to explicitly call that out. What I'm seeing now is that this list with item D in it is going to be included anyway. And so I would suggest there's no harm in adding "and on the city's website" to that per the committee's request. But I think that was the only reason from my memory that we didn't include it. Ms. Silvera?
It's required by law. I've highlighted it on your screen. It's already required by Chapter 271 for COs.
So it's already there.
It's already there.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Just not in the language of the charter, but it's a requirement of law, and the fact that you're changing it to be in accordance with law, we're going to follow this.
All right.
Because
Anybody else?
shall comply with the state law. That's your key language that would require us to post it on the.
All right. Well, if that's everybody, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve this uh, number L in accordance with the changes that Aaron has made to it.
Second.
All right. I have the motion by Mr. Williams, Councilor Williams, and the second by Councilor Marion. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. We go to M. Shall last paragraph of section 8.11 be amended to reduce the percentage of registered voters required to protest issuance of debt instruments. If approved, the last paragraph of section 8.11 would read as follows: unless provided otherwise by state law, if before the date tentatively set for the authorization of the obligations or the authorization, the city secretary receives a petition signed by qualified voters equal in number to at least 5% of the number of registered voters in the city at the time of the last general city election, protesting the issuance of debt instruments, the city may not authorize the issuance of the obligations unless the issuance is approved at an election ordered, held, and conducted in the manner provided for bond elections under Texas law. So immediately I see we need the question mark, and I think we should put, we're reducing it like we did in the previous one, where we added in there, we're in the description, reducing it from 10 to 5%. Yeah. Anybody else? All right, audience. Oh, Councilor Prince.
I mentioned this to Ms. Silver in our earlier conversation today. I think there's just a grammar problem. So at the beginning of the paragraph, unless provided otherwise by state law, if before the date tentatively set for the operation of the obligations or the authorization. Have you already fixed that, Aaron, or am I missing it? Yeah, that second or the authorization, I don't think belongs in that sentence. The date tentatively set for the authorization of the obligations, comma, the city secretary receives.
Thank you. Councilor Dava.
I'd like to make a suggestion that we move the part that says from 10% to 5% immediately behind the percentage, reduce the percentage.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Anybody else, council? Was that a thumbs up or a one you're holding up there? Your name was blocking your hand. I couldn't see. All right, there we go. Anybody from the audience? All right. For at that point, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we accept item M as modified by Ms. Silvera on the screen.
Second.
All right, I have the motion and second by Councilor Marion. Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, motion carries unanimous. And we go to N. This is our non-substantive ones, I believe. Shall the charter be amended to correct non-substantive grammatical, typographical errors, and Scrivener's errors? Corrections to the following sections would be included or would include, I don't know, would be included or would include. 3.01, turn to Tim. 3.08, paragraph 2, turn to Tim. 3.16, paragraph 2, turn to Tim. 4.01, golf, from golf to J. Juliet. 5.01C, whatever that character is, to file. 8.12, FOML to form. 10.06I and I or to and or. 10.07 connection to correction. Is that all of them? All right. Anybody see anything we've left out? If y'all recall, is that all of the non-substantive changes? All right, anybody from the audience see one we've missed? All right, I'll entertain a motion.
Mayor, I will make a motion that we accept item N as modified by Ms. Silvera on the screen.
Second.
Second.
All right, I have the motion and the second by Councilor Williams. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Hearing none, the motion carries unanimous. That is all that I have on my page.
Mayor?
Yes, Councilor Prince.
Before you close, if I may, I wanted to explicitly ask this question. We had a lot of discussion in the previous session, especially about how many was too many for ballot measures. We now approved the language for 14 potential ballot measures. And I went back and looked at them kind of with an eye of, if I was going to cut the list, where would I start? And to be perfectly honest, I found two that I could argue maybe we could get away with not doing, but I'm not sure the difference between 14 and 12 is all that significant. So I'm in favor, I think, of moving forward with 14. But I asked Ms. Silvera to think about, is there any other history or things that we might want to consider along these lines of kind of limitations or common, what's common to be done in terms of how many ballot measures. And so I would invite her comment on this, and then others from council weigh in, obviously.
I'm not sure she heard you.
Aaron?
Doesn't look like she did.
Aaron, are you able to hear me speaking?
Aaron, can you hear us? I don't think she can hear us. Aaron, can you hear us? Okay, Councilor Marion.
Mayor, I would just like to comment that I'm actually in favor of leaving. We voted on them, I think, already. I'm in favor of moving all 14 forward at this point. I think really, considering where we started, getting it down to 14 was quite a feat. So I'm pretty pleased with the list as we've voted on this evening.
And so, and I'll make the comment, we did kind of in the office today, we kind of talked about it, and the number 14 was not, nobody had any really objection to having 14. I mean, it's a fair amount, but it's not too many. I don't know, the voters may think differently, but we'll see, I guess. Councilor Davila.
Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
I'm okay with the 14, but I would love to hear Mr. Prince's 2 that he would omit.
You want to throw them out there, Councilor Prince?
Yeah. I'm checking my notes here and getting my mic back on. So the first one to me was letter I, where we are deleting an obsolete sentence, and so yeah, better without it, but there's no substantive change there. So if we left I off, we don't lose anything. That one seemed pretty clearly to me the one we could let go without losing anything. My second place was around letter D as in dog, where we trying to find the notes on that. We this was about the reading of the caption. And so whether we have to make this change in order to be compliant with state law, my thinking was we're already doing what we're describing with this change, and we have to follow it by state law regardless of what the charter says. So again, this seemed to be a case where we could drop it and there wouldn't be any harm done. There's no problem with doing it. So those were my 2. And then once I got to those, I couldn't find another one that fit in that category of ones we could delete. And as I said earlier, the difference to me between having 12 and 14 is not substantial enough to argue it.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. In my opinion, D, because it's state law, I would just assume leave that one in there. Just make sure we know. I know we know, but not everybody else would know.
Yeah.
So, and then the I, I don't care about I either way. Councilor Sullivan?
I'll just throw a vote into leaving the 14. My original hope was to get under 10, but since we're not under 10, the difference between 12 and 14, as Mr. Prince has said, it isn't a big deal. So I say just leave them.
Okay.
Aaron's back on.
I'm back. Councilor Prince and I had discussed briefly me possibly kind of giving y'all some kind of background of what historically folks have seen. And I indicated to him that one of the documents that not only the Charter Review Committee, but I have referenced is this book, the Texas Home Rule Charters. It's a bit outdated as far as some of the language because the last version was put out in 2010, it's being updated now currently. But I think the dialogue or the discussion about kind of amendments to charters and how many were submitted to the voters, is relevant. I think 14 is right in line. You can see, historically more and more cities have had charter amendments, as the decades have progressed. And then the committee that put this together, kind of showed you what kind of amendments, and I'd pointed out previously that 81 amendments was kind of the record for the number of amendments that were submitted to the voters. So, when you look at on average how many amendments per city, sometimes it's relatively low, sometimes it's a little higher, between 10 and 15. I don't think 14 is unreasonable. One of the, as the document kind of the book points out, the percentage of voters doesn't really change. It's relatively low. We experience that same issue with the percentage of people who come out to vote for our elections is relatively low unless it's a presidential election. So, that being said, unless you want to kick the can and wait till the next presidential election to amend the charter, we're going to get the voters that would normally come to the ballot box anyway. And 14 is not an onerous number.
All right. Well, unless I have a motion, we stay at 14.
We stay at 14.
All right. Councilor Davila?
Yes, sir. I just wanted to throw something out that I think I found it pretty amazing. I asked our city secretary to determine how many people have registered as voters. And as of December of last year, I was floored by the number 6,856 registered voters. That's more than the number of people that we had in Lago Vista just living here back in 2010.
Yep.
Yeah. It's a fair number. All right. Any say Browns regarding changes? All right. If that is everything, I will call this meeting adjourned at 8:03 p.m. Thank y'all.
Yay.
Have a good evening.
See you tomorrow.